Everybody, welcome to Cigars and Syndication, where we're passionate about cigars and real estate. I'm Robbie. I'm here with my co-host Jay, and we're going to smoke a Davidoff Signature Lancero and talk about some current events, interest rates, credit card debts, things like that might impact your ability to invest.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Cigars and Syndications. I'm Junaid Noor. Um, one of the things that I wanted to address in this podcast was somebody had asked me, well, how do I get to that first $100,000? I make $100,000 a year. How do I get to that first $100,000 so I can invest into something and start building my portfolio? So I think we'll touch on that today too.
Good. I think they'll all be good topics, and hopefully people take these to heart and try to get themselves positioned to take advantage and invest and get into real estate.
Yeah. So, well, let's start with the interest rate. As you know, the Fed did not raise interest rates yesterday, but they did hint that they were going to raise again, at least one more time this year. So they have a October, they have a November, and they have a December, and they're going to raise at least one more time this year. So, um, it's still hurting real estate. The deals are getting more and more expensive. There's a lot less deals out there. Sellers don't want to sell. But on the flip side, we did a podcast on this before, where on the flip side, a lot of loans are going to come up due in October and November of this year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the market.
There's a lot of discussions right now about the Fed's raising the interest rate again, and there's a lot of fear that this might be the final straw to push us into recession. We've had this trend of spending all this COVID money and COVID relief funds, and I think that's transitioned into everybody spending on their credit cards and accumulating credit card debt, not slowing down their spending. So the GDP's not shrank, employment's still pretty strong, and I think that credit card debt is kind of the wild card.
Yeah, and I did read an article about that where credit card debt is kind of getting much, much higher now than pre-COVID. So during COVID, a lot of credit card debt had fallen. People had money, they weren't spending money, so they paid off their credit cards. And the economy, the savings rate in the U.S. started looking like Japan, where people were saving money, um, not using it for not using it for consumption, and credit cards were some of the lowest numbers that we had ever seen. But now it's coming back up, and I think you're right. People spent a lot of money that was printed by the government and handed to them, and once that ran out, they couldn't stop themselves.
So kind of back to the question, how do I get my first 100 grand? And I think credit card debt is definitely one way to prevent you from getting there.
Absolutely. So let's say, just running some numbers, let's say you make $100,000 a year. So in order to get into any investment, you're going to need to have some money saved up, whether you're buying a house to flip, or you're getting into a larger multifamily investment through a syndication. You're going to need to have some money to invest. And so the question that people ask a lot is, how do I get to that first $100,000? I make $100,000 a year, but of course I have expenses, I have taxes that I need to pay. How do I make that 100? How do I save that $100,000 a year, or $100,000, that first $100,000, in order that I can invest? And the first thing is, don't charge things on your credit card. I mean, right now with the interest rates so high, credit cards are at what, 22, 23, 24, 25% interest rates, you know?
Yeah, keep that money in your pocket. Get your spending in check. Don't have to keep up with the Joneses. Drive a car that's paid for. Do all these things that help you get to the end result you're looking for.
Yeah, and the word we're looking for is austerity, right? Sacrifice now or sacrifice forever. So if you make $100,000 a year, you spend about $40,000 on yourself, $20,000 in investments, and I'm sorry, $20,000 in taxes and $40,000 in investments. That's pretty much how you break it down. If you are, if you're spending more than that, if you're not saving as much as you are spending, you're not going to get to that number very quickly.
Yeah, it's going to take you a long time to get there, and you're right. You have to sacrifice now for a few years to get your goal. Just go ahead and suck it up, change your lifestyle to where you want to be.
Yeah, and at that number, at that rate, it'll take you about 2.5, 3 years to save up $100,000. So, how do you do this? Well, don't go out and buy a brand new car. Interest rates are high where you're going to buy a brand new car and you're going to get stuck with a payment. Get a used car.
Yeah, I mean, get something that you can pay cash for, and you don't even have a payment at that point. There's a lot of different ways, I think, but understanding, how much money you're bringing in and how much you're spending, and then how quickly you want to get to your goal.
Absolutely. The other thing you can do is, you know, if you're going to buy a house, well, first I would recommend that if you're new, you're just starting off, don't buy a house. Um, get an apartment, get roommates. If you don't have the money for down payments and things like that, and even if you do have the money for down payment, I would suggest to put it into investment property first before you buy your own house. But if you can share an apartment with some roommates who are spreading the expenses, that'll help you save some money.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think you've got to really just kind of you've got to cheapen up your lifestyle, or be more conservative in your lifestyle. You're going to the grocery store, you're cooking your meals, you're not going out to eat. And if you do go out to eat, it's a treat. It's not something you're doing every day. And clothing, everything you spend money on, you can do it in a conservative fashion.
Right. Nobody says you have to wear tattered clothing or eat rice and beans every day, but be intentional about where you spend your money. And, there's a book that I recommended to my children, I recommend to everybody. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. And The Richest Man in Babylon is a very easy read, and it basically talks about a very important concept, which is pay yourself first. And so pay yourself first comes from the fact that, look, you pay the government in the form of taxes. You pay your lenders in the form of car notes, home notes. You pay your grocery people, your grocery store. You pay your cleaners. You pay everybody else, but you don't pay yourself. And the idea is pay yourself first. That means put aside the money for savings first. Then what's left is what you spend.
And I think that's brilliant, because if that's how you do it every time you get paid, you live your life like that money's not even there. You keep saving, keep building your nest egg, keep building your first potential investment, and it doesn't really impact your lifestyle if you've never used that money to enhance your lifestyle.
And very few people in their 20s and even in their 30s or 40s have the discipline on how to use credit cards. And so if you don't have the discipline, don't have a credit card, have a debit card. Don't go and charge things that you don't need, that you can't afford, and then wind up paying, a 25, a quarter of the value, 25% interest higher than what you originally paid for it.
Well, growing up, Jay, and for a long time, I always heard that you want to try to save 10% of your income. What do you think? I mean, I think that's a long road if you're making 100 grand.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that too. Save up 10% of your income, at least, or 10% is the number that a lot of the financial advisors will give you, and a lot of um, the party talk. Hey, what do you think I should be saving up? Oh yeah, you should save up at least 10%. The reality of the matter is, if you're making $100,000 a year and you're paying $20,000 in taxes, you have $80,000 left, and you're saving up 10%. $8,000 a year is really not going to get you. It it's a start, but it's not going to get you to your goal. It's not going to get you to that $100,000 that you need saved up in order to take that next step. What is going to get you?
40%.
40%. 40%. And you'll be interested to know that the wealthier people get, the more of that money goes into investments. So when you have people at the $500,000 income level, they're saving 50 to 60% of what they're making. They're not saving 10%.
Right, and that's why it has an incremental impact on their wealth growing and how fast it grows.
And we did a great episode on compounding and how even the income that you make should be reinvested and how quickly it compounds over time. And we can link to that episode at the bottom of this episode. But compounding means you're not spending, you're holding, you're reinvesting.
And if you're in a position and maybe you have kids, maybe you can't save more than 10%. We're not telling you to give up. Save that 10%, but manage your expectations and understand it's just going to take you a little longer to get there.
Yeah, and this is really an episode for some of the younger folks who are just starting off. You got your first job out of college, you're making 80, 90, $100,000 a year. This is the time when you have no other obligations. Hopefully you don't have student loans. But even if you do, a lot of those are paid slowly over time, lower interest rates. But this is the time to pay down those student loans, not incur new loans, and just kind of austerity, right? Bring it in and spend less and save more.
The median net worth in the U.S. right now or I think the survey was 2019 was 121,000, and that included any equity you had in your home, which is really negligible. So by saving 40%, getting invested, you can go well beyond that.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that if the median net worth is $120,000, $121,000, and most of that is sitting in the house that you own, it's not very liquid, and you can't take that money and invest that. You need liquid cash. You need to be able to jump on an opportunity when an opportunity arises, and you need to be able to have that money available. And the only way you can do that is save up that money and have it available in cash.
Yeah, and I really liked your thought process. Your thought process when you were talking about, maybe be a little selfless and your first investment not be in your own personal home, but in an income producing home.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the same advice when I was in my 20s, I would not have gone and bought a house. I actually didn't buy a house in my 20s. I invested money. But I don't know. Even now, it's debatable whether we should have bought a house for the family or not. Of course, there's other things when you have kids and you have a wife and you have a family, because you want that security. You want that, that permanent place to be able to come home to. That has a different value. But purely from an investment perspective, I wouldn't buy a house if I didn't need to.
Yeah, and I think, with the Feds holding on the interest rate, maybe indicating that there might be another increase before the end of this year, I think it's got a lot of people maybe apprehensive about what's going to happen in the future and what's the last straw that kicks us into recession. Hopefully they make a really educated decision and one that doesn't crumble the economy.
Yeah, and one last thing I wanted to say is that I think I read an article someplace that said that something like 60% of Americans are not ready for $1,000 emergency. And as you go through life, lots of emergencies come up. And if your money's tied up, you don't have cash available, your money's tied up in your house, or it's not even available through your house, you're going to wind up using credit cards to meet those emergencies. And then you're going to wind up kind of just getting stuck in that spiral going downwards where you're always getting to negative net worth and not getting to a positive net worth?
Well, I definitely wouldn't use a credit card to buy a Lancero, but if that was your only option, you might want to consider it. It's really a good smoke. I'm enjoying this Davidoff right now.
Yeah, so this is the Davidoff Signature #1 Lancero. And believe it or not, the Europeans love the Lanceros. Um, and most all of the manufacturers, the producers of the cigars, that's what they smoke.
It really is a different draw. It's really clean. You really get maybe an enhanced flavor or an enhanced sense of what the different fillers and binders are all about. It's a nice change of pace.
Yeah, it is. And when I first saw this Davidoff, my friend Sammy up in Chicago at cdmcigars.com sent this to me, and I looked at this and I'm just like, this is really not my cup of tea, just because it's a much lighter. It's a Connecticut wrapper. It's a lighter wrapper. I really like the darker, more Maduro, more full body. And what was he thinking? He knows what I like to smoke. But gotta hand it to him. He knows what I like to smoke.
Yeah, no, it's a good smoke. It is a little bit on the lighter side, but really incredibly smooth and just packed with a flavor, a good full flavor for a lighter cigar.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please feel free to leave some comments below. We'd love to answer your questions.
Yep, look us up on albanyparkcapital.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Have a good day.